Welcome to the 37th CALLERLAB Convention. Today is Tuesday, March 30, 2010. And this session is called, what's it called? How we use our music. How we use our music. And my name is Buddy Weaver. And to my left-hand side is the oldest living square dance caller in the world.
Living.
Still living. That's right. But with all kidding aside, he's a super guy. You know, he's a very talented individual. He's been in the record producing business for 80 years, longer than they've had records. Make welcome Ernie Kinney.
I see we have some competition in here too, because the title of this session is Our Music, not Wade Driver's music or somebody like that. You want me to start? I'd like you to start. Okay. Singing calls. Usually, most of us, when we start a dance, I usually start a dance with a singing call. A hot one. Get their attention. And so you know how many we have that are pretty good. Like, name one. I can't name except the old ones. 12th Street Rag or something. Rolling in my sweet baby's arms, something like that. Yeah, something pretty hot and get their attention. And my dancers seem to like that pretty well. So you can slow down it as the dance goes and up and down. And you know all the rhythms that are used, and these are some of the rhythms that are not used in singing calls, but we put it on the flip side of one of our hoedown records years ago. Would you play that, buddy? The different rhythms in music. Two, 4, 4, 4, 6, 8, waltz. Shuffle, walking bass. Latin flavor. country rock flavor. Then we left one off. See if you remember what that was when we get through. It says right here on the bottom of this paper, this thing we put in the record, we apologize for leaving off the 6/8. But that's probably one of the most popular in square dance records, isn't it? Singing call, 6/8, 6/8-4/4. But we do have different records, and when we produced our records, we were informed that most square dance callers are not professional singers. Not professional singers. So if you notice in our records, and most of them nowadays, the melody is played so you can hear it, so we can pretty well stay on the melody when we sing along with the record. And because we are not professional singers. So, anybody have any questions about this? Pretty explanatory, isn't it? Some of these, this Latin, I don't think I've ever heard a square dance record like that. Are you? Oh, yeah. I don't have that. Sambas? Yeah. Well, usually we go back to the beginning of a class. Do all of you teach classes? Square dance classes? Most of us do. 9% of us do. I teach square dance classes, and I start the first night doing singing calls for them. So what do you use for a figure? Well, we start pass through, separate around one, into the middle, pass through, split the outside tune, separate, go around one, down the middle, pass through, separate, round one, into the middle, pass through, split the outside tune, everybody swing your partner. So they come back to their partner. We haven't got them to the corners yet. Some of you do, but I don't. And so toward the end of the first night class, I can give them a singing call because, according to my lesson plans, they get an hour and a half lesson. All the clubs I call for get an hour and a half lesson. And we start from the large circle within the room, and play our music. They hear hoedown records and circle left and circle right, and turn the girl on your left by the left, turn your partner right. And we get all that while we're in the big circle. And then finally, check the recordings. Finally, we finally get into squares toward the end. Now, this is the first 3 sessions I'm talking about. We start this way every time because the class is open for the first 3 sessions to anybody that comes in. If they come in the 3rd session, well, then we got to do the same thing over we started with. And after that, we start moving into the different movements. And each time we do that, we've got to use those in a singing call if we can find a place for them. So those movements we teach. And I don't stick with singing calls all the time, but I do stick with the people that are out there and watch them very carefully and see what they know and if they can react. But the main thing I do with my classes is listen to the caller. If you don't hear what I say, you're not going to be able to react to what I say, are you? Listen to the caller. Now, the music we use has got to have good beats because they've got to dance on the beat. They don't know that yet. They don't know. Back to one time when the first time any caller ever called to the Ghost Riders in California, Square Dance Band, I was him. And halfway through into the first patter call, I said, wait a minute, hold it. We should go about 128 to 132 beats a minute. You know, on this, and they were going, those people were really going. So I said, well, told the bass player, I said, watch my foot. Every time I pat my foot, you hit something. And that's the way they got started, really. But you can't go too fast for beginners, can you? Can't go too fast. They got to listen. And the music I use is music that has a good beat that they can hear, a good bass beat that are good, something they can hear and move to that. Yeah. The rhythm. And this is both in singing calls and what he's going to talk about is the patter calls. And does anybody have any questions? Okay. Doing a dance, we vary our singing calls, don't we? All of us. Use some that are nice and smooth and easy, and I seldom ever use the same figure twice in a singing call. I vary it depending on where I'm calling and who the people are out there. Head square through four hands, and yeah, I learned this a long time ago. Head square through four hand, do a right and left, you know, and dive through and square through three hands, and split the outside tune around one, and forward and back, and swing a corner if you can find her. And simple things, of course, that they know how to do. As we get further into it, you use your singing calls, and you vary your figures, unless you don't know what you're doing. And you got one memorized and you want to be sure you do that one. So, like one I did the other night. What's the name of that I did the other night? That singing call I did Sunday night. Oh, that's the one. I've never changed the figure in that one. But, I don't know. It's something that I've brought on myself to try to sell the people on the song I'm doing and dance while they're dancing to it too. And they vary in tempo. We should do that. Toward the end of the dance, I may get down to a part of the song that I will say, go very soft with it. It's real soft. Turn the music down a little bit and get your voice down a little bit, kind of glide through it, then bring it up when it closes. So it all depends on the song. We've got to go into a song, and I didn't bring but two or three. I brought couple records with me. One was El Paso City, of course, but I was going to do Cowboy. So, go Cowboy, and hold that for about 10 seconds or maybe 30 seconds or maybe an hour and a half. Way up high. And I looked at this last night. It's Cowboy Rough. I didn't bring the song I was going to demonstrate. But singing calls, we have, I don't know if we're the only ones or not. I've not found any more, but we have records that we have produced. The C-side got a C-side on it. Most of them got A and B, and we got ones with C-side on them. He does now. And but with harmony. So we have records, El Paso City's one. We have that on the C-side. So you have harmonies you can sing along with in the melody part. And I don't know if Wade, did you ever have any of those with harmony? I thought so. And makes you feel a little better if you got somebody helping you sing. And if you make a mistake, you can blame them. Blame the harmonizers. Anything else?
Thank you. I'm going to kind of draw the conversation towards patter, hold-on usage. And, as a caller, and I made this comment in an earlier session, as callers, a caller who does not understand music is like a carpenter who does not understand how to use a hammer. And too often in today's world, we find callers who do not understand music. It just seems to be accompaniment. And we find that callers get so caught up in the idea of choreography as being the single means of entertaining dancers. Yes, music can be used as a showmanship tool, but even if you're not that station in your career that you can use it as a showmanship tool, at least having the basic understanding of what it does. And music comes down, in my opinion, and I can preface, Wade, you said that, right? As long as I preface everything I say with, in my opinion, as an essential tool, music breaks down into two components. Number one is rhythm, and number two is orchestration. A subset of orchestration, and orchestration would be that to say that it determines the feel of the song, and a subset would be, for example, things like phrased versus non-phrased, and B would be traditional versus contemporary. Now, I'm going to illustrate to you what I'm talking about. I'm going to first of all bring the conversation to just talking about 2/4, boom chuck. This is a traditional square dance rhythm. This is the square dance rhythm that came about in the late 40s and really stuck with it. Traditional square dance music, if you really want to go back 100 years, really was a lot more phrased and revolved a lot more around 6/8. But the modern Western square dance movement came out with traditional 2/4 boom chuck. This is this is a piece that is a non-phrase piece. Now, when we talk about phrase versus non-phrase, let me back up just a tad. Phrase versus non-phrasing. And phrasing, if you're not familiar with it, is actually being able to follow the actual musical phrase and allow the dancers to take the first step on that musical phrase. Talked about it in an earlier session and about how you allow the dancers to take that first step. Non-phrase music and hoedowns came around in the late 1950s, and callers began to understand that hoedowns were what we called the forgiving piece of music, because non-phrased hoedowns meant that you could jump in and fall out any old time and you didn't have to follow a musical phrase. This is a classic non-phrased hoedown. Unless you really are familiar with the tune, you could not tell me where the phrase begins and ends. Popular hoedown called 1020, used to be on hi-hat, now it's on a different label. Callers love this because you can jump in and jump out any old time. 2/4 boom check. Boom check, boom check, boom check, boom check. You have the down step and the step up. Boom chuck is, in my opinion, it's very similar to a brisk walk. It's a brisk walk. And it allows the dancers to step lively to a piece of music. It allows the caller to fall into a nice musical phrase. It allows the caller to find some cadence. This is a non-phrased, and yet I'll find a musical phrase in here. Here's your musical lead-in. Walk all around the left-hand lady. Seesaw around your own, join hands, circle up, 8 around you go, circle left and do a left down a man, do a right or left, grand right and left and around you go. Fall in, fall out easily. A more phrased piece of music is this little cut here. And it actually tells you pretty much where you're falling in and falling out. Walk around the corner, seesaw on your own. Join hand and circle to the left and around you go. And again, boom, shup, boom, shup, boom, shup. And you'll hear some musical turnarounds here, so it tells you where one phrase is ending and one phrase starts. Nice little turnaround. And what's determining the phrasing for you is the lead instrument and how strong the lead is being played. Every piece of music is a tune. Every hoedown, regardless of how seemingly just a set of rhythm, it's still a tune. And it's just and the phrasing is determined by the instrumentation and how the musicians or the producer asks the musicians to play the lead, and that gives the caller now the place to jump in and jump out. It's not really so much for the caller. And here's the misunderstanding I think about music is that music is not for us callers. The music is for the dancers because it's them stepping to the beat. Okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into 4/4. But I'm going to say one more thing on 2/4. And when I mentioned about orchestration coming into phrase versus non-phrased and traditional versus contemporary. And this is where you can probably create a whole evening's program around nothing but 2/4. I wouldn't, and I'm going to explain that a little bit further as we get into this. But if you're going to be presenting music, you're going to want to present something that's perhaps a little more traditional every now and then. We've kind of gotten to a place now where a lot of popular callers are saying, well, we need to get away from the old fiddle and banjo. Brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you that fiddle and banjo has brought square dancing to where it is today. You stand on the shoulders of giants who came out there and put fiddle and banjo pieces of music together. This is a traditional piece, was done back on the 78 RPM in 1957 on Blue Star Records called Up the Creek. And about 5 years ago, I took that old piece and I said there was a bass line in there where I think the bass player was drunk because he's kind of wandering around a little bit. And I said, let's reorchestrate it. And this is what we came up with. I love this piece. It's traditional. It screams at people that this is what square dancing used to feel like. Now this, we recorded it on purpose at 132 beats a minute, which is pretty darn fast for today's dancers. You can slow it down and you can still get away with it. You can bring it up and play it at 132 and you'll be just fine with it. I like the fact that the phrasing here is fairly strong too. Now, I'm going to turn around and back that up if we're going to do something a little bit different now, because I'm going to want to give the dancers some variety in the evening's program, so we're not going to always do that same kind of traditional music. The orchestration is what I would consider to be more contemporary. I don't think there's a live instrument being used in the creation of this piece of music. It's all done computer samples. Oh, this is called Smooth and Easy on Blue Star. And the previous tune was Up the Creek on Blue Star. Not that I'm advertising Blue Star. No, it came under another title, but that one has since gone away somewhere. 4/4 rhythms, shuffle rhythms, are very popular today because a lot of callers love what it's now become referred to as alternative music. And alternative music, I've queried a number of callers to determine what they consider to be the definition of alternative music. And the general consensus is anything that is produced by someone other than a square dance record label. So that's fine. I said, now we sat here with an earlier session that dealt with nothing but alternative music. And we used an awful lot of samples. And I'll give you a few samples that are coming that would be considered pop. Let's see, just a moment here. I'll pull this up. I actually have to go to a previous session's piece of music. These are 4/4 shuffle rhythms. And let me pull this up here. Sorry. Alternative music, Walmart downloads. In the absence of the boom chuck, you find yourself with a boom, 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 step, 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 march, march, march. A 4/4 is a march. That's what it's going to do for your dancers. You're going to march them around. And if you are going to use this type of that's called I Drove All Night, and the original artist is Celine Dion, and that's a Walmart.com download. If you're going to use a 4/4 hoedown, and most of us are in we call a format where we do a patter and a singing call, I'm going to want to chase that 4/4 hoedown out with a 2/4 or 6/8 singing call. I'm not going to come back in with another 4/4 beat. Now, if you're doing dances, if you're an advanced square dance caller, and a lot of advanced dancers don't use singing calls except for maybe every now and then. And so if you're using a lot of, and I've been guilty of this myself, where I've gone in and said it was going to be mostly patter tonight, and I love this alternative music, and I'll just do one after another, and you see the people start to be marched around. They kind of march right out the door because they're tired of being marched around all night long, and that's what 4/4 might do for you. Now, 4/4 not only provides a nice marching rhythm, it's easy for the dancers to fall off the rhythm. It is very similar, whereas we said 2/4 is a brisk walk, 4/4 is a march. The brisk walk kind of gets you back up and gets the people moving. The 4/4 kind of, if you're walking around an awful lot, you tend to fall off. Talked about what 2/4 and as an example of the boom chuck does for you as a caller, and how you can stay on a phrase and you can call in cadence. 4/4 does exact opposite. And I want you to think about it in terms of marching, that what you're doing, and I'll give you another working example of this. I want to use the same piece of music here. And the same figure that I used in the earlier boom chuck. Walk all around the corner, seesaw, joint hand, circle, left around. Left on the man, here we go, right and left grand. I'm barking the commands at the dancers. The 4/4 does not allow you to go walk all around the corner, lady, seesaw around your own. You can't do that. You can't do the 4/4. You can, and you'll sound awful, because you're just boom, boom, fighting right up against the rhythm. If you're going to follow a 4/4 rhythm, you're going to have to come to a 4/4 style of calling, which is going to be very similar to offering commands, marching orders, as it were. So be aware, not only now we talked about 2/4 and 4/4, what it does for the dancers, and here's what it does for you as a caller. Here's what it's doing for you as a caller. Now I want to jump right into 6/8, because this is a very overlooked rhythm. And especially in hoedowns. I don't know very many callers today who use 6/8 music in hoedowns. 6/8 music in singing calls, there's quite an abundance of it. El Paso City. Who's Your Lady Friend? Rhythm of My Heart on rhythm. There's quite a few of them out there. The 6/8 rhythm, while it is very different from the 2/4 and the 4/4, because it really gives you an effect of like if we say 2/4 is like a boom chuck, boom chuck, boom chuck, and 4/4 is like a boom boom boom. No, the 6/8 is more of your ta-dum 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 ta-dum, and so the effect of the dancing is more of a skip kind of step. If you ever remember being a kid, and when you'd skip, and you skip, ta-dum, ta-dum, ta-dum. And when we as dancers, everything we do as dancers tends to modify back to this 2/4 kind of format. It ends up feeling much like a jig step. So it gives you a nice little boost. And you'll find the dancers have a very difficult time keeping heels on the ground when they're dancing to a 6/8 piece. This is a new one. This is on Riverboat. This is actually called Riverboat Reel. And this is my new favorite. Ta-dum, 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 ta-dum. You're doing exactly what I noticed dancers doing. When you do 2/4, you can't see my feet. Dancers kind of tap their foot. 4/4, they kind of stand there. 6/8, they start doing this. Their whole body starts moving. And it gives a whole different effect. And if you can incorporate 6/8 rhythms into hoedowns, into patter calling, it will give your dancers a boost that they have never known. I started doing this about a year ago. And I got the wild idea from listening to some old tapes of Bruce Johnson, and reading some old writings of his. And I said, I really haven't spent much time with 6/8 hoedowns. So about a year ago, I started incorporating this right around tip number 4, maybe tip number 5. And you know what happened? The dancers all stayed to the very end of the evening. It was amazing. And it was an advanced dance, which had a lot of hoedowns, a lot of patter usage, and very little singing calls. But all of a sudden, if we started with 12 squares, we finished with 12 squares. I said, well, son of a gun. There may be something to this music stuff after all. Now, what it does for you as a caller is it forces you to change your calling style, because we already said 2/4. Well, walk all around the corner, lady, seesaw around. 4/4. Walk around your corner, girl, and seesaw. Joint hand. You have now 6/8. You can't call it that way, can you? And I'll give you some more work. If I wanted to call it like a traditional, walk all around the corner, girl, and seesaw around your partner, joint hand and circle to the left. It doesn't fit. I can't do it that way. 6/8 rhythm is a rhythm that if you do not call in cadence, in time with a 6/8, it is a rhythm that will kick you in your back and let you know you are not in time with 6/8. So I'm going to follow the musical phrase. Walk all around your corner, girl. Seesaw around your own. We'll join hand and circle left. You circle left around the ring. And out the man left, the old left hand. Here we go. Right on left, grand. Grand right, left around the ring. And I sound different because I have to start moving my, the way I say it. It can't be an alaman left or a left alaman or alaman. It has to be left alaman. Left alaman. Practice that. When you're sitting there at home, you're driving your car down the road, practice that idea. Left alaman, the old left hand. Left alaman. Left alaman, the old left hand. Left alaman, left alaman. And you begin to understand that, wow, this is a challenge now as a caller to be able to do this. So for you callers who are out there saying, well, I need to have that challenge, that's why I go into difficult choreography, but I also exchange, sometimes I do very difficult choreography. Well, there's more to it than that. If you're really looking for a challenge, learn how to call 6/8 as a hoedown. You can do it as singing calls because most of us just follow right along to that rhythm. It has a nice lifting feel to it, a 6/8. Now, Ernie played El Paso City. I love El Paso City. And I, in fact, let's see if I can find it right here. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ernest. I like El Paso City as a hoedown. I use it as a hoedown. In fact, I use it as a hoedown at Ernie's dance on Saturday night. Walk all your corner, girl. Seesaw your own, join hands, circle left around gathering, ladies in men's sachet. Alderman left, alderman bar, go right, go left, boy in and star. Slip the clutch, alderman left, the old left hand, away we go, right and left grand. And let the dancers just dance to it. A lot of times you'll find dancers who've been dancing for more than 20 years and you put that piece of music on, they say, oh, it's El Paso City. Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that one, but boy, it sure gets me dizzy. Well, then you start calling a hoedown to it. You start doing a patter to it. And they say, well, that's kind of weird. But then when they're done with it, they don't know why, but they really enjoy the heck out of it. So the idea here is you're going to change up. If you're going to use 6/8, and I strongly encourage you to do so, use one. Use 1 6/8 hoedown in a night. Use maybe 1 6/8 singing call later on the night. Certainly not back to back, and you could probably get away with only 1 6/8 piece in your whole evening's repertoire. I would highly encourage you to do so. It will have an instant effect on not only your dancers and their response to you, but it'll have an instant effect on your own interest in what you're doing behind the microphone. So change up on rhythms. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? Anything? Ernie? Boogie style. I'm glad you mentioned that. Boogie style, that's a little rhythm thing here. Rhythm samples. Once you get past that first track of Boom Chuck 2/4 here. Yeah, once you get past this, you get to your next. And you get to the next. Walking bass. Latin. They're all subsets of 4/4. They're all subsets of 4/4. As previously mentioned, the alternative music craze that's sweeping our country right now is because the alternative music elicits an emotion from the dancers and from the caller. When you put it on, if they're dancing to something like the one we just did, "I'm Alive," which was, which one did we do? I forgot. I drove all night. Okay. It elicits a certain response from the dancers. But, and you might find a piece that has more of a Latin or more of a boogie woogie, but it's still a marching rhythm. No matter how you cut it, it's a subset of a marching rhythm. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I should have read your question on the microphone, but the question was, what about boogie woogie? All right. Questions? Answers. Yes.
There's a song out that's very popular, the hoedown boogie beat. It might be a rhythm, I'm not sure. What is that? Are you familiar with it?
Keith Ferguson asked about boogie beat, the hoedown on ESP. What? Yeah, right. What? It's a 2/4. It's a nice little boom chuck. But it. Is it new on rhythm? Is it new on rhythm? Boogie beat? What's your new hoedown on rhythm? Boogie something. Wage Driver says, I don't know. Somebody's pirating the name. If it's the boogie beat on the old ESP, it's a 2/4. The instrumentation is played in such a way where it gives more of a frantic feel to it. And that comes back to orchestration. And I think I mentioned that very early on, that rhythm sets the tone for what your dancers will dance to, but orchestration will set the feel. It will set that mood, so to speak. And so something like boogie beat, which I don't have with me, tends to bring on a very frantic emotion from the dancers. Likewise, you can put something like one of the other ones we did earlier, like the 2/4 Up the Creek. Again, the emotion you're going to get from the dancers is, ooh, 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 I gotta go, gotta move. Versus something like a 2/4 where we had that smooth and easy on there, which is more of a laid back, I can relax type of rhythm. So that comes under orchestration. Very good question. You got something else?
No.
We touched on we touched on singing calls just a bit too, and the singing calls when you do incorporate your singing calls and be aware of the rhythm changes in there, and there's a lot of good resources out there on understanding rhythms. The caller text that was published by Bob Osgood, the Sets in Order caller text, had some very good information on there. It's just a matter of understanding what you're doing and what effect it has on the dancers. It's more than just background accompaniment. And a lot of producers spend a lot of time putting out a specific sound because we knew that this is the effect it was going to have on the dancers. And sometimes when we kind of just put it on just for background noise, it's a shame because you sometimes are losing valuable musical qualities. Question, yes.
I wonder if we could get ways to make a comment about different rhythm he did Honky Tonk Heroes, full Honky Tonk Heroes on Chaparral. I think the same guy did it. There were two different kind of rhythms.
Wade, we have a request for your comments. Well, wait a minute. We've got to get on the microphone now. Hang on. Here, we've got a wireless.
You know the way down here.
I'm still old. I'm going to have to come down the stairs. That's the boat, Ernie, Kinney.
I'll help you up there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we did do a cover on Honky Tonk Heroes at Ken Bauer's request. Not so much because of the rhythm, but because of the mix. The mix on Chaparral on that original cut was not cut in Nashville with their normal stuff. They did a pickup band in Dallas. And in his opinion, I'll make no comment, but in his opinion, they did a rotten job on the music. All right. So he bugged me for 4 years to recut it. So we went and did a recut. It's not one of the better things we've done, but in our opinion, it's better than the original was. It's got more life. The music quality in the first one on Chaparral wasn't bad, but the mix was just kind of dead. It just was dead. So we tried to do something with a little more life. And matter of fact, that one wasn't cut in Nashville either. I cut it at Elmer Sheffield's ESP Studios. So we did that one. And we tried to give something a little more life to it. And Kinney liked it because he had a little more life in his calling. The problem you have with the first one is that when you have a piece of music that is dead, you do all the work. And I'm too lazy to do that. So as Buddy said, if you got something that's going to drive you along, let it work and you just kind of cruise, go along for the ride. Anyway, that's why we did that. If that answers your question.
It is on. When we do singing calls, sometimes things come up that are different. The song I'm about to have Buddy to play is a song that we recorded. This is not the name of the original song. I forget the name of the original song. I have it at home, but I changed the name of the song because one of my dancers had this name. And a little Mexican girl, and her name was Corina. So I wrote this dance for Corina. I didn't get anything from her. Side space, grand square. Oh, Corina, I'm so glad that I found you. My world is turning around you. Girl, you're one of a kind. Element left, weave the ring. Oh, Corina, you're the sun in my morning. Girl, I'm giving you warning. Soon you're gonna be mine. My wife didn't like it. It's promenade, go halfway, in the middle square through, for I say, go all the way around and then swing through. Boys running Ferris wheel you do. Square through now, 3/4. Swing your corner, girl, and promenade. I know that I was dreaming, 'cause look what I found. So, I get, she liked it pretty good. But I've thought about it. You can find different names, in this same song. And, Helena. You can find different names, so you guys can sing it to most anybody you want to. You girls can even put a boy's name in there. Oh, Richardo.
One thing too, before we get to wrapping this thing up, is talked about the effect on rhythms and hoedowns, but the rhythms and singing calls too. I remember years ago I was working with a fellow who was a relatively new caller, and he just loved those ballads. Man, he just loved singing those ballads. And he'd come out and one tip he'd do "Green Green Grass of Home," and the next tip he'd come out and he'd do another ballad, like "Sweet Dreams of You." And before about the end of the third tip, fourth tip, his dance shrank down to about a third of what he started with, because the folks were just so run down. It became too blue, or it was just too much of one rhythm, and that rhythm just kind of wore the folks down. So if you remember that too, when you incorporate the rhythms and the singing calls, that should complement what you're doing with your hoedowns. If you're coming in with a nice 2/4 boom chuck, you might want to chase it out with more of a laid back 4/4 singing call, but just kind of spread it out. Variety. And the last thing I want to talk about too is musical variety. Is a lot of it's found in the changing of your record labels. So if you're if you have a love affair with one particular label, get over it. And start buying other record labels, because if you're using one consistent record label every single tip on that hoedown, that singing call, you're in 80%, maybe 75% of the time you're using the same musicians, and it's going to have the very same sound to it. And that can also start to wear on folks. So change that up. Any other questions from anybody else? A question right here. Yes, sir? What's your name? Harry Carmen? Jerry Carmen. The question and comment was made that with aging dancers, that sometimes you find you have to slow the music down, or because the dancers aren't able to step to that rhythm. There's a difference between timing and tempo. And I hope this is going to address your question. If you're giving a call like square through, and square through is going to take you 10 beats, it's 10 beats, regardless if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. It's still 10 steps to get there. So by slowing the music down, you're allowing the dancers more time to do it. Probably all the more, I would be inclined to incorporate more rhythms, more of a change-up of rhythms in that case, because they're probably even more sensitive to the fact that they may be plodding along through some of those tips. And so you might want to throw in something like a 6/8 on the next one and slow it down, and it still gives them a little bit of a lift, and you still may be calling it as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But with a little bit of a lift, then it doesn't feel so draggy. Does that answer your question? No. Yes, Wade.
I'm a round dancer, and also I teach ballroom dancing. And I found that when people play to music, I saw this years ago, I saw people dancing advance, and the music was fast, but this dancer was going through it. It was Dr. Good. He was going through his effortlessly. And what he was doing, he was dancing every other boom so that he would just make his step bigger. So he's dancing half time. move foot-wise, but he was still moving. In fact, he looked like he was doing nothing. He was strolling through. And you can actually teach your dancers as they get much older to dance half time, every other beat. It's very simple to do. It just takes a little work on your part. And you're not calling it that way, but they feel like that. They're dancing every other beat. And they're going just fine. They're doing better than the dancers that are dancing. The younger dancers are dancing on a beat. Also, if I'm at the ballroom and they're playing something, swing or whatever, or a quick step, and they're playing it too fast, I dance out of the beat. Right? And then if they play the music too slow, I double up and I dance every half beat. So I dance up quicker. I'll do 2 steps for 1 beat. So you can train your dancers to do this, and it's a great tool for them, no matter what you're dancing, ballroom, round dancing, whatever. It can work.
Thank you, Tom. Oh, right here. Norman has a question.
Norman Wilcox, Georgetown, Ontario, Canada. I'm curious. I'd like to take a poll of the people here. Back when I started calling in the early 60s, we were dancing at 120, 130 beats a minute and thought nothing of it. Matter of fact, when I started out, I had a turntable that I couldn't slow it down, and I was clocking one of a rubber dolly at 144. But anyway, that's. I'd be curious to know what people are running their record turntables at today in general. Could we get a poll on that?
Okay. Well,
I'm running mine at 125.
What's a turntable?
What's that?
What's a turntable?
What's a turntable? All right. Well, true enough. Which of course makes the question a lot easier if we're using computers. You can pick the beats per minute up right down to the second decimal place. I'd be curious to know what you guys are running your music at.
Good poll. How many of you folks are out there are using your music at about 128 beats a minute or less? 128 or less. 126 or less. Okay. How about more than 128? How many of you are using more than 128? Good man. Good answer. Does that answer your question? From a producer standpoint, we've slowed the music down an awful lot. 128 for my tastes is about the slowest I'm going to go on a hoedown we produce. And if you want to play it at 126, you're welcome to slow it down. And it's easy to slow those CDs down. Just put your finger on a CD and it'll slow it down pretty easy. But if it depends upon the kind of music too. If we're going to do Crackerjack or Up the Creek, I'm going to put it out at 132 and send a prayer request with it so that your dancers will do just fine with it. Yeah. General consensus is most people are less than 126, somewhere between 126 and 128. 126 and 128. Bo, do you have a question?
Yeah. Bo Byerly from Raleigh, North Carolina. And it goes back to the music. 126 with some music can sound faster than 130 with a different piece of music. It just depends on who produced it, the band, the orchestration. Can make Boogie Beat, the one that I'm thinking of that I use. It is very frantic, and it's not that fast. The tempo is not that, but boy, it sounds like everything's going on, fireworks and all kinds of stuff. So it's not just tempo. It's that particular piece of music, and you've got to take that into account along with the tempo.
Keith has a question. I tend to vary it between. Hang on, Keith.
Keith Ferguson, Saratoga, California. I tend to vary 126, 128, depending on, to some extent, the type of choreography I'm planning to use, or if I'm doing a workshop tip versus a tip where I really want to wake the dancers up. So I do change it, and then I forget to change it back.
Ernie. Tom.
I used to be able to do that. Tom Sellner from Maryland. Many years ago, I saw a caller do this, and this was very interesting. When he was workshopping, and he'd take his patter, he would turn the treble down. So he would just get the background there. And then after they had workshopped the figure about halfway through, he turned the treble back up to where he wanted it. And this provided the dancers, and it means that any pattern you were using, you'd almost make it perfect for you by turning that treble down. So they're just hearing this during the work while they're trying to get through the figure, and then when you want them to dance, turn that treble back up. And if you've ever watched Kip Garvey call, he's sitting there and he's turning every knob on his record player the entire time. Every time the music changes, Kip changes it to something else. And there are some people who can do that, get the best out of every record they play.
Wade said something that is totally right. When you're doing a singing call and the dancers are behind you, they can't keep up with you, the best thing in the world to leave out is a do-sa-do. Yeah, forward and back. No, you don't have
forward
to do
and
that.
back, or give them a singing call, which will have them swinging their corner across the street, so that the promenade is 16 beats rather than 32 to get back. 8 was it 8 beats? No,
something like that.
Wade's got another question there.
I think you'll find, and I've used this little trick done there with some of the older dancers. A lot of us probably far too often.
Wait a minute.
I know far too often, but let's face it, we do a lot of head square through 4 do-si-do on a singing call. And then we do the figure, whatever the figure might be. I think you will find if you do a heads promenade half past the ocean and extend, you save yourself about 2 to 4 beats. And you'll get there a whole lot quicker.
Wait. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Something ain't changed.
Friends, we've come to the end of our time slot. Thank you very much for your kind attention and your participation. Enjoy your convention.
I have something I brought with me for anybody who would like to